Hey everyone, James from TeaDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. So today I'm going to bring on going to be talking a little bit about storage, this is one of our most requested Inbetweenisodes or episodes, and I've done one before, but gonna do one again. It's been a while, and that is showing my storage, how I'm storing tea, specifically my Pu'erh storage. People have specifically requested, wondering what is in this thing, and I've talked a little bit about it, haven't showed it publicly all that much at least, so going to talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to be pulling a cake, or I should say I already pulled a cake from my storage, and it's one that I had sort of set in the category of set aside. Let's see how this does in a few years. So going to be retasting that on the show, and that's sort of the latter half. So if you're just interested in seeing my Pu'erh storage, no worries, just watch the first half. I will talk about that. So yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I'm a believer that the simpler is better when it comes to Pu'erh storage, which might be a little bit absurd considering this is big. But this is big, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's terribly complicated. It's not even plugged in, first of all. It is a Eurocave wine storage. I think it's quite old. My guess is, or at least the best guess I could come up with, is from the 80s. It's basically used for climate control on wine. And so I was fortunate enough to pick this up for free. I got it locally. A couple bought a house in my neighborhood, and this thing was tossed in probably because it was too much of a pain in the butt to move, and so they had to get rid of it, and so they ended up giving it away, which is nice because I think it's a pretty nice brand. I'm definitely pretty unfamiliar with the wine storage scene, but I've been using it to store tea for a couple of years now. Seems to be going quite well. My basic principles when storing tea is aroma. You want to protect it from aromas. Something like this, or the fridge I use for easier access, are just really natural at that. They're just going to protect from them. You do want to make sure that you're not getting weird plasticky aromas from your actual storage. So from this, haven't had that issue. I aired it out pretty well, and it just seems like the tea has overtaken it. One of the beautiful things about this is when you open it up, it just fills this room, which is sort of my tea/office room, with just the wonderful aroma of Pu'erh. So the aromatics are really nice, perhaps even more so in the summertime, filming this in the dead of winter, just a day or two after winter solstice. And the other thing is density. You want to be able to have a really high amount of Pu'erh per volume. So if you only had a few cakes, something like this would be a pretty bad idea. And so I think that kind of tells you how out of collection my Pu'erh has been in the last 5 or 6 years, or last 7 or 8 years, I guess, at this point. And really, I've been quite a bit better about buying less in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's really those a few years in there where I probably bought just way too much. So hopefully this is a lifetime of Pu'erh for myself. The last thing is sort of light humidification. One thing that's really nice is once your Pu'erh is nice and well conditioned and it's generating like 60 to 65 relative humidity, it does a pretty good job of maintaining that without a lot of added stuff. So I am someone that goes through the Boveda packs. I buy those. I only have to buy a pack of however they come in 16 every 2 years or so. So I've checked back, and I bought a pack in 2015, bought a pack in 2017, bought a pack in 2019, probably gonna have to buy a pack next year in 2021. So personally, I don't find that overly expensive considering the amount of Pu'erh that I'm getting. And so basically I just add those Boveda packs to it. So pretty simple, just store a whole bunch of stuff in a condensed space, add a small amount of humidity, try to keep it above 60, in that 60 to 65 relative humidity range. And so far I've been fairly happy with it. And even before I had the Eurocave, these were kind of the basic principles that I went by. So let's get into just showing you the insides of this. Also going to be talking a little bit about my ripe storage. Okay, so first off here, wanted to show a couple of like the quick access tins that I have, and these are just really basic tea tins, clay that I bought from Daiso, which is a dollar store for those not familiar, so they're real cheap, $1.50. Okay, so here we are. This is the cabinet which I keep my ripe. I do not keep it totally on an open shelf, it's sort of in this cabinet. You know, it may be not like 100% optimal storage, but considering that my space ended up gravitating towards 55 relative humidity or so, which is, you know, not low, it's not super high either. I think it's a pretty acceptable range for me to store it. So really low key storage here, just pretty much just leave them as is and store it. My ripe stash too, I think it's important to note, is intended not for long-term drinking, but it's where I put all my cakes and then I'll drink through them and then I'll replace them. So most of the teas there have not been there for all that long. Okay, so this is my Chefmate, my easy access fridge. The philosophy of this and the Eurocave are pretty similar. So you can see here, so this is a lot of partly drank cakes, stuff like that. I do not open my Eurocave very regularly. Instead, I open this. So I keep it there. You can see a Bovita pack or two in there, and just kind of a mishmash of stuff that I'm regularly drinking from, all of which are, I believe, raw Pu'erh. So almost all semi-aged, so ranging from 10 years to 22 years or so. I think I have like a 1998 Iwu brick in there. Okay, so here is the Eurocave, and one quick note I wanted to say about this is if I were to do it over again and start from scratch, I don't know that I would go necessarily this route, but when you have this amount of tea and you have a setup that works relatively well, there's a certain amount of status quo bias that does kick in. To change it, I just don't think I would have the energy or the will to do so. But if I were, I'd probably look at someone like Marco, who has a pretty neat setup, in my opinion, with yeah, I mean, just with heating and stuff like that. Thinking about heating all of my tea and stuff like this and doing that overhaul is just, it's too much for me to even consider. So usually the relative humidity here is a little bit above 60. It drops a little bit as you open it up and let it air to sort of the ambient environment. So yeah, that's what we are looking at there. So let's get on to the 2006 Xiaguan Pink. Okay, so the tea I am going to be talking about is a 2006 Xiaguan cake. I have half a cake here. This is a cake that I got from Taobao with Garrett over 4 years ago at this point, in 2016. So we basically, I think we did a Tea of the Month report where we drank through a bunch of Xiaguans. This one was a standout, so I bought a handful of them, 5 or 6, I believe on the 11/11 sale in 2016. So a little over 4 years ago. They were pretty inexpensive at the time. I think they were sub $40. Which was quite a good deal even at that time. I think they're a little bit more expensive now, but probably not too crazy. And they come from the lineage of the Xiaguan Feitai productions, where they like these, for some reason, pink and red wrappers. The Love Forever paper towel comes to mind, as well as the Forever Love. They also have a couple other pink wrappers. So it's the pink Feitai, number 4. I liked it then because it's a little more approachable. But then upon buying it and trying it, and we split a cake in two, so you can sort of see that I have half a cake here, half of a nafe here as well. Trying not to make a mess in this room. Garrett and I split a cake. And both of us kind of came to the same conclusion that it was a pretty rough compared to what we had sampled before. So it ended up being a tea that I have not revisited all that much and gone into storage. I did taste it a year later in 2017 after it had been stored in my storage for a while. So that was when it was in November 2017 when it was 11 years old. Filming this in December 2021 or 2020, not that far ahead in the future. So it's now 14 years old. So it's had a few extra years. But here's my notes in 2017. It's not something I'd personally choose to drink very often, and is probably more like a C in terms of drinkability, but offers a lot of punch and substance within its core that I like to think will make it a decent prospect for the future. Revisit in 2020 or something. Well, it's 2020 now. We are here back at that tea. So I remember it being quite strong, quite caffeinated, and a little bit more so than I usually choose to get in my drinkers. As someone that tends to like tea that has, or Pu'erh at least, factory Pu'erh that's had quite a bit of age under its belt. So let's get into it. Steep number 3 or 4. I had steep 1 or 2 just an hour or two ago. Say this is still a really aromatic tea. I take that as a good sign for my storage, that it still smells really strongly of tea. It has that really characteristic Xiaguan aroma. Not much smoke in it, which is one thing that appealed to me of this tea all along. Sweet mentholy, definitely a little bit of that pine bitterness to it. And I'm also going to go ahead and make steep number 5 here before this water cools down too much. And yeah, I'd say at least in terms of this steep, it's certainly quite a bit more approachable than it was a few years ago. But sometimes these steeps can be deceiving, as usually, especially for heavily compressed teas, first couple steeps aren't necessarily the strongest. All right. So steep number 5 there, and it's brewing a solid semi-aged color, sort of this orangish red. At least that's what it looks like to me. And so in that earlier review I read, I gave it a C+. I've since converted my rating scale, but according to Marco's scale, that's like probably about a 5.2 or so, which was actually a lower rating than I would have given it the year before when I was just sampling it. Nice wood, really soft texture to it, and you know, I'm actually really enjoying this. I've been sampling through a couple of Xiaguan tools recently. I think this is actually a touch better than it, so I'm going to definitely upgrade my rating. Let's see how this steep is as well. Really approachable, really drinkable actually. I'd say this is less of that aggro punch that can be a little bit too much than a lot of the tools I've been doing, definitely more than half of them. Yeah, I'd say this is probably better than the Jiaji, at least this session is. I did get some nice chunks here, so definitely not brewing a overall crummier session, like with smaller bits and pieces, which for some of these factory teas can have pretty bitter results. Cheers. Yeah, really nice. So less in that fruity vein, more in that sort of woody, perfumey stuff. Definitely one to keep your eyes on. I know this one can also sometimes be available in Taiwan. It's Feitai, which I believe has close ties to sort of a Taiwanese export product. So I'm going to give this tea a 6.2 rating, which is a little bit better than the Yin Kong tool I brought on the other day. Just kind of a solid tea. Probably still can get it for $50-$60 is my guess. And yeah, at least on this session, it's really quite enjoyable, and definitely one that maybe I'll have to when I have a little extra space in sort of my more short-term Pu'erh, I may bring this half cake over and start to drink through it. So yeah, I think that just about concludes this Inbetweenisode. Going to be also, in terms of looking at storage progress and some of these teas that I've had that have been around a while, 2014, 2015 range, going to be bringing on a white tea that I recently got, just to sort of see how their storage is going and how that tea has progressed. So thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.